So this new legislation, there's very little evidence that it will stop the boats. It so far hasn't really had a big impact on preventing people from trying to reach the UK. But the goal of this new law is to expand the number of people who could be deported to Rwanda by saying Rwanda is definitely safe. So the law says even if we learn that refugees are becoming malnourished in Rwanda, even if refugees who are forced to move to Rwanda are then deported back to their home countries where their lives are at risk, that should just be disregarded. The law says Rwanda is definitely safe. And the goal is to increase the number of people that way and deter new asylum seekers from arriving via the boats.
And so there were efforts to try and put some safeguards around how people were going to be treated there. They did not make it in this final passing of the bill, did they?
No, they did not. The House of Lords wanted to add a clause that said there would be an independent monitoring group to just find out what happens to refugees once they arrive in Rwanda. What happens to asylum seekers? Are their claims being taken seriously, or are they forced to live in an enclosed camp that they can't leave? But there's no such independent monitoring group now. So the law says Rwanda's safe and has no mechanisms to find out if that's in fact true.
So is Britain going to manage the asylum seeker claims, or is Rwanda going to do that?
Rwanda is going to be managing all of the claims. Importantly, it's Rwanda that will be managing the claims, even though it lacks the capacity to interview all of these refugees and all of these asylum seekers. And if an asylum seeker does prove they're genuine refugees, they will have to just live in Rwanda. They won't be able to live in the UK. In that sense, it's a novel policy. Other countries sometimes outsource asylum claims. They send refugees and asylum seekers to other countries to look at their claims. And then these asylum seekers can move back to the country if, in fact, they're refugees. In this case, they will definitely be living either in Rwanda or deported back to their home countries from Rwanda.
So is this actually now considered a legal process in Britain? I mean, are there any other avenues of legal appeal?
Well, that remains to be seen, but charities are certainly going to try to bring cases to the courts, including individual cases, claiming that they won't be, in fact, safe in Rwanda, even if the legislation says that Rwanda is safe. There might also be a court petition against the general premise of the legislation, challenging the claim that Rwanda can just be made safe if the law says it is. So there might be possibilities for legal challenges.
Is it clear at this point who is going to be sent to Rwanda? Which of the many asylum seekers that arrive in the UK are going to be sent to Rwanda? Will any claims be processed in the UK?
As of now, claims are all supposed to be processed in Rwanda. In theory, if a claim goes to the court, and the court concludes that it's not safe for someone to go to Rwanda, and they accept that you can't just claim it's safe because the law says it is, then perhaps a claim could be heard inside the UK. But the aim of the legislation is to have no asylum seekers who arrive in the UK without a visa beforehand, which is nearly all asylum seekers. The aim is for them all to be forcibly removed to Rwanda, or nearly all.
It's quite extraordinary. It's an extraordinary policy. To your point, I think Israel tried something similar to this, sending refugees to migrants to African countries. Is this an example of what might happen in this case, or is it a very different policy?
Well, in other cases, countries like Italy have paid some African governments, such as the Libyan government famously, to host migrants and asylum seekers who were already in Libya, saying the Libyan government gets money if they keep them in Libya. The EU had a deal with Turkey saying keep the refugees there, transporting back some refugees who had already reached the EU. But this is in some way setting a new precedent in that asylum seekers who have already arrived in the UK, all asylum seekers who arrived in the UK without a visa, will be transferred to Rwanda to either stay there. So this is in some ways, as the Prime Minister claimed, an innovative policy in its level of humaneness and level of lack of oversight.
Yeah, it's quite unprecedented. So, as you pointed out at the start, this is not necessarily going to stop people getting on the boats. We just reported that 5 people died at sea, including a 7-year-old girl. These deaths are going to continue. People are still going to try and get on boats, or is the expectation, once this comes into effect, that it will be a deterrent?
Well, either the government won't successfully actually transfer people to Rwanda, in which case the government will have wasted hundreds of millions of pounds trying to persuade the Rwandan government to take them, in which case it won't have a deterrence effect because people won't move to Rwanda, and so people will continue to try to come to the UK. Or it will, in fact, have a deterrent effect. If the government succeeds in forcibly transferring the vast majority of asylum seekers to Rwanda, and conditions are horrific in Rwanda, then it will have a deterrent effect because people will be afraid of being removed to Rwanda. So either it'll be ineffective because it won't work, or it'll be extremely inhumane. So in some ways, it's a loss, this particular policy.
Does Rishi Sunak see this as some sort of election turning? You know, we know that the Conservatives are in deep trouble in terms of when the next election is going to be held. Does he think this is going to be a popular policy?
I don't know if he thinks it's going to be a popular policy. We know that the majority of UK citizens do not support this policy, primarily because it's very expensive. That's their main concern. It could be that the extreme right, a small fringe of the extreme right, support the policy, and he wants to win some of their votes from Labour. But given how incredibly unpopular the policy is, given that it's not only inhumane but unlikely to work, this isn't a policy that has a great deal of democratic legitimacy.
Oh, such an extraordinary and we'll watch with interest as it plays out and see what happens. Good to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.